A federal judge orders the Dakota Access Pipeline that runs through Iowa to shut down until more environmental review is done. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg ordered that the shutdown must be done within the next 30 days. The environmental review requires the pipeline to be emptied for the review that the Army Corps of Engineers says is going to take about 13 months. The pipeline has been transporting oil for the last 3 years. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe sued over worries an oil spill could pollute the Missouri River.
He's an activist, attorney who has been camped out near the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. Thanks so much for joining us, sir.
Great to be on. Thank you.
So you've been on the ground for quite some time. What has the dynamic between Native Americans and the Army Corps of Engineers been like?
That's a long, controversial history, beginning in 1944 with the Flood Control Act, where they took illegally our shoreline and then flooded it about 14 years later in 1958 and destroyed our economic potential for a second time after the Buffalo. So we've had a storied and controversial relationship with the Army Corps of Engineers for a long time.
And what's it been like subsequent to this protest?
Well, right now, the Army Corps of Engineers has called upon the local law enforcement, highly militarized law enforcement, and forcible arrests have begun. There's a forcible removal going on right now as of maybe 4:30. A lot of people have not surrendered, and they are standing their ground in there defending the treaty rights and constitutional rights not only of Native nations but of all Americans who have had their constitutional rights violated on the ground out here.
And that leads to my next question, sir. Describe, because I don't know that a lot of people may be familiar with the treaties that exist between Native nations and the United States. Can you describe them for us, and what would you like to see change?
Yes, well, Native nations recognized we were the first that gave any sort of legitimacy to the presence of colonial European travelers who came into a hemisphere that we civilized. And so we recognized their sovereignty. They didn't recognize ours. But the land where the camp is today, where the fires are going, where the arrests are happening, that's land that is contested treaty territory that we've never been paid for. There's been no negotiations. We haven't treated for that. It's unclear title. And so we are asserting ourselves, as is our birthright, in that territory for the first time in 130 years. And now we're being pushed back to within the confines of the Indian reservation.
KCCI's Ticia Muzinga tells us how environmental groups are responding to this news. Ticia?
Well, Stacey, this has been a long battle between environmental groups and the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, but they say this is still a victory, even though more work needs to be done here. Now, Bold Iowa, a group that's fought the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline, is urging Iowa Utilities Board to reconsider its decision to allow Texas-based Energy Transfer to double the flow of oil through the pipeline to as much as 1.1 million barrels daily to meet growing demand for oil shipments from North Dakota.
This is not just about indigenous rights. It's not just about water, land, property rights. It's also about climate change. And the impact that an additional 500,000+ barrels of oil a day the impact that has on climate change is huge, because it's about the equivalent of 30 new coal-fired power plants.
Now, Fallon goes on to say we cannot expand fossil fuel production and expansion. I also reached out to the Iowa Utilities Board, and it says any increase in oil can't happen until there are updates to the pipeline. No word on when that will be completed.
The owner of the Dakota Access Pipeline threatened Wednesday to keep the pipeline open, defying a court order for the pipeline to be shut down and emptied of all oil in the next 30 days, pending an environmental review. The company, Energy Transfer, told Bloomberg News, quote, "We are not shutting in the line." The company went on to accuse the federal judge of exceeding his authority, claiming he, quote, "does not have the jurisdiction to shut down the pipeline or stop the flow of crude oil," unquote. The company later said it had no intention of defying the order. Energy Transfer is owned by Dallas billionaire Kelsey Warren, who hosted a fundraiser for President Trump last month. A federal judge has barred the Trump administration from gutting an Obama-era rule limiting emissions of methane, a powerful greenhouse gas. Thursday's ruling by U.S. District Judge Yvonne Rogers will reimpose limits on the amount of methane that oil and gas companies can allow to leak from drilling sites on public lands. Scores of prominent environmentalists have signed an open letter demanding a halt to all investments in fossil fuel exploration and extraction and an immediate end to all fossil fuel subsidies. They're also calling on member states of the International Criminal Court to make ecocide an international crime.